Welcome, everyone. Imagine we're just sitting down together, swapping stories like old friends. Some will be funny, some thought-provoking, and some might even surprise you. That's the beauty of hearing people's experiences. You never know what's coming next. I'm excited to share these with you, and I want to hear your take on them too. So after listening, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going and make sure to subscribe so you're here for the next round. 10 years ago, with my college graduation looming and a few short films under my belt, I, 23 million at the time, wanted to springboard into the entertainment scene. My sights were set on getting involved with a movie as a production assistant that I was hugely excited for. On the movie's IMDb page, there were 3 production assistants listed, including a man I'll call Kat and a woman named Lisbeth. When I looked into them, Kat had some good similar credits, and forum posts were saying that Lisbeth was the older daughter of a very prominent Swedish actor, born out of wedlock. Accepting that at face value was my first mistake. So I reached out to Kat and Lisbeth via Facebook as I couldn't find other means. They told me the movie was already staffed, but we could stay in touch for other opportunities. A week into production, paparazzi and fan sites were going haywire, as Kat's Instagram account leaked photos and videos that were apparently from the set. When his immediate social circle was pumped for information by the media, there were conflicting words that it was his daughter or that the Instagram account was a troll's. In any case, further word was that he was removed from the movie and placed on a smaller tangential project. Well, things got interesting as the lead Ingénu's character's name was announced, and what are the odds it was Kat's somewhat unique name? The word was that the lead had autonomy to name her character, so she honored him as such, somewhat far-fetched for a giant production, but even the IMDb page listed this trivia, not anymore. In any case, the lead showed up on his Facebook and we actually had a pleasant exchange, until I offhandedly mentioned he and Lisbeth. Suddenly, she blew up on me, accused me of name-dropping Kat before blocking me. Lisbeth reached out and threatened me with legal action and blacklisting as well. Seemingly in over my head, I was absolutely befuddled and intimidated. Then, Lisbeth eased up and claimed that the lead had a change of heart and was offering to get me into a private pre-screening for the movie a couple months before release. I was confused but accepted. I was directed to contact the lead's supposed manager, AJ. I did, and after telling me someone was pulling my leg, hung up on me. Lisbeth said that he was probably tripping on cocaine, so we'd revisit it later. I talked with Kat over the phone and we agreed it was all a misunderstanding and that the lead was just paranoid. He offered his services as a producer if I had any projects at hand, which I did. A horror spec script I had hopes to see made. Over the better part of a year, we remained in contact as I attempted to assemble that makings of an above-the-line crew, while also hoping he could rope in a prolific actor he said he was connected with named Ashley. He put me in contact with a friend of Ashley's named Shauna who grilled me, calling me unprofessional for not having an agent, though complimented the script and recommended we work with an actress she was friends with called Kristen. As for Kat, he became increasingly irritable until he lambasted me on a public post, saying he's not my mom, and we didn't communicate directly for the next year. The producers I attempted to work with procrastinated and had deliverables that were not promising. Like most would-be projects, we were essentially theory crafting about the film more than anything. I got to know a producer named Nick who had apparently raised funds for several indie productions. But the producers I had were leery, as they heard he ripped off crew members. When my executive producer bilayed after a year of leading me on, I had enough and decided to go with Nick in late 2016. My above-the-line crew all stepped down, as they had since heard rumors about sexual harassment and a massive lawsuit for unpaid wages. I looked into it and couldn't find anything, and he attributes the rumor to lies spread by a former business partner, telling a story of an actress freaking out because he once knocked on her hotel room to ask if she was ready, so I brushed it off. Nick recommended we get a name like Kristen, so I brought up that we could talk to Kat about making it happen. After a month or so, Kat called me, very excited, as he claimed to have gotten in touch with Kristen. Their backstory was that he was her assistant from years prior. A couple weeks later, he claimed that he needed to smooth things over with Ashley, as she was angry to see her picture in our pitch deck alongside Kristen's, as she allegedly had a feud with her. Lisbeth re-entered the picture by claiming Ashley came to her, likewise angered by the pitch deck. Small world, huh? The next month, Kristen appeared on Facebook, interacting with Kat, Lisbeth, Shauna, as well as another actor we were interested in getting in touch with named Jane, and started interacting with Nick and I. She claimed to like my script and was tentatively on board with being in my movie after she'd shoot her thriller in New Orleans. We started receiving products signed by her in the mail. After this point, things took a dark turn. Nick and I began to receive messages from these dummy accounts using real people's names, claiming that we were dealing behind one another's backs, basically trying to destroy the production. Nick was pitching his own scripts to Kristen and Jane, but I was aware of that. Furthermore, Kat's extended circle of filmmakers started to get looped in, with messages accusing us of besmirching one another, with the premise of some of the others being that they were right-wingers who were against Kristen's orientation. Another was James, now 60 million, who was belittled hardcore for his acting abilities and intelligence. I had a Skype call with one of them, Bryce, now 40 million, to discuss the situation, and we ended the call being equally confused. After this, Kristen grilled the hell out of me, with accusations of betraying her and being the one who doxed her, followed up by messages from Lisbeth, Shauna, Jane, and Kat. A few days later, Kristen and I smoothed things over via text, a California number, so that was all the drama for the week. The slew of harassing messages continued, until Ashley of all people appeared on Facebook and contacted Nick about our movie. Apparently, when Kat talked with her agent, it did not go so well, so she stepped in to say she would clear the air. I communicated with Ashley, and like the others, she absolutely jumped down my throat, claiming to have no idea who I was, that her father was undergoing chemotherapy, and that she had told Nick nobody was to communicate with her, which he said she didn't say. She sent a message to Nick encouraging her relationship with him, while dismissing me as that Sam kid. I was 26. Between this and the constant barrage of harassing Facebook messages, I had enough. I closed my Facebook account and resorted to handling things offline. I started receiving harassing web-to-text messages 24/7, claiming to be people from Kat's social circle, calling me R, threatening to kill me, and being protective of Kat and Kristen's relationship. The messages all ended with these real people's numbers, goading us to call the numbers and ask what was up, always to be met with the confused voice. Hell, I received a number of confused calls myself, as my name and number was attached to these messages saying, "Don't call me R, you baby is ugly and you need to kill yourself." Another actress who was offhandedly mentioned by Jane named Jessica reached out to her, and after a few exchanges, Nick was contacted by Jane, with claims that I was stalking Kristen and that I was going to be slapped with a restraining order. The stress was getting to me, and I ended up dry heaving and getting heart palpitations. My family and I went to Disneyland to meet some family from Australia. By the end of the first day, Ashley texted me, saying she heard that Kat had passed away, followed by a web-to-text messages asking about it. That's right, I couldn't even have a proper escape to Disneyland without having this chase me in perpetuity. I cared about Kat, so it hung over me. When I returned to Alaska, Nick forwarded a message from me to Whit, someone from Kat's circle who I had talked with previously, to try to understand it all. She responded by saying she wasn't my mom exactly as Kat had, that I had creeped her sister, a prolific actor who I never communicated with, out, and that I would be slapped with a restraining order if I had communicated with her again. In essence, I was offline, being defamed and being driven towards suicide. I filed a police report at that point, but nothing ever came about from it. 2 weeks after the Disneyland shenanigans, Kat resurfaced. Following recommendations from Shauna, I arranged to make sure that Kat would cameo in Nick's new movie. While they were on set, they talked about the perception that these actresses had about me. Nick would endearingly say that they didn't see me as a brilliant writer, but a boy from Alaska, which I found creepy on his end. As writing was my goal, Kat said that he would refer me to his agent, a lovely lady who got along swimmingly with me. Kat was supposedly headed to Cannes to share my other works there. I received emails from representatives from several companies expressing interest. After all the torment, there was hope again. In the world of Facebook, accounts were inundating Nick with messages implying that I was going behind his back and was represented by one of the 2 biggest agencies, which I wasn't. He began to aggressively text and call me, demanding that I reveal who else I may be dealing with. I had enough of the bludgeoning, so I declared that we needed to go our separate ways. He immediately threatened me with legal action, prompting my now agent to step in and intervene. Within the next day, Kat expressed concern that Nick was right, that I shouldn't be trusted, and I received a text from Kristen within minutes that Kat freaked out about me and overdosed on cocaine while surrounded by industry professionals, followed by Nick forwarding a message from Lisbeth saying I was a piece of shit for throwing Kat under the bus and how fortunate he was to have Nick our final interaction, 7 years and counting. Within minutes, I received a slew of new messages from the Cannes people, saying they were pulling out due to a controversy with me, thanks to Lisbeth's word. Likewise, a producer contact named Becky, who Kat put me in contact with, forwarded emails from agents and production companies about unsolicited submissions, as someone using my name was bombarding them with my scripts. Yes, I know it's obvious now, but I was so overwhelmed with this harassment from so many angles that I couldn't parse through it. I confronts Lisbeth with this over LinkedIn, and she claimed that my only hope for a future would be if Kat forgave me, while also claiming Kat was sleeping with Kristen. At that point, I was alone, offline, having gone through the horrific collapse of everything and nobody around to comfort me. The harassing text messages continued to come in, with threats and everything. They destroyed my project, but that wasn't enough. The last thing they wanted to break was me. Through this, I somehow believed that Kat was innocent, so his recovery was a priority. After a couple of months, we began to email again, and he even said that I should reach out to Bryce about getting Lisbeth's number, as she would be at his 4th of July barbecue. I did that, only to find out that this was when Bryce was recovering from a major surgery repairing damage from combat years later. So Kat used that as an example of me causing problems, even though he had set me up for that. After a couple more months, my agent asked me what I wanted to do. As I did want to focus on screenwriting, I thought we could take the script we had talked with Kristen about, approach her about attachment to the project, then sell it. So I asked Kat if he could talk to her about it. The next week, she absolutely exploded at me over text and over the course of literally 12 hours, belittled me, and claimed that I was just manipulating my relationship with Kat to get an agent and get to her. Kat began to sending awful emails about how his relationship with Kristen was now derailed, and that he would request that I be dropped by my agent, leveraging his 20 relationship with her, either him or me. He added that I could remain a recluse, cut off from the world. What I didn't learn until years later was that when he went to her, it wasn't about Kristen, but he claimed that I had disrupted his relationship with a major studio. So my agent called me up to drop me, but when I broke down over the phone, having not done anything that I was accused of, she held off on that and decided to merely put everything on ice for the next couple of months. as something wasn't settling right understatement of the century. The theory at the time was that I was hacked or something of that nature. Kat and I made up, chalking it up as a misunderstanding, while Kristen texted me, calling me unprofessional and inviting me for a beer if we ever met up. While I was off Facebook, I met a woman on eHarmony who I fell in love with. The following spring of 2018, I left Alaska to join her on a road trip and move in with her in Ohio. On the first night, after I had checked into a hotel in the Yukon, I emailed Kat and my agent, saying I'd be happy to meet up with them. Kat claimed that he had begun to receiving harassing messages about me belittling him that day. Over the coming days, my agent and virtually everyone in Kat's circle received harassing messages, encouraging to cut ties with me and accusing me of all sorts of nonsense. When I got reception upon entering the States, I had tons of confused voice and text messages. Once again, while I was at my most vulnerable and out of reach, the attack had resumed. But I met up with my agent and her daughter in Disneyland a week or so later, and we got along perfectly. The harassment partially subsided at that point. One thing led to another, and I got engaged later in 2018. In order to effectively organize things for invitations, I reopened my Facebook account. I had no interest in collaborating with Kat at that point, as he was emotionally unstable and the drama was at least catalyzed by him. Plus, my career in entertainment was self-sustaining. The harassing messages from dummy accounts were now a trickle, but I was honestly numb to it at this point. Kat's adult daughter, Renee, added me. She was pleasant enough, but she seemed to be too involved with her father's affairs and grilled me about being loyal to him. Nobody had heard about her before, but she was supposedly a black sheep in the family. I had neither the time nor energy to make a deal out of any of it. For the next several years, there were about a dozen times that Kat claimed he was dropped by the agency, which turned out to be false. The frequency of drama gradually increased by December 2020, where Renee was grilling me about deciphering who I was, where I came from, as she claimed hundreds of people in her father's network wanted to know who this Sam kid, I was about 30, was that he was putting it all on the line to defend me, against everyone calling me R-Ed. Kat, Lisbeth, Shauna, Renee, Kristen, Ashley, you name it, they all repeated that I was being called R-Ed, thanks to Nick's supposedly far-reaching influence. The idea was that Kat and absolutely every filmmaker and actor in the Pacific Northwest knew one another, but I was the absolute only outlier. They claimed he went back 20-plus years with Nick, Bryce, James, etc. Interesting, considering that he knew Bryce from only 2011, I remember when he met James and I introduced him to Nick. They claimed that prolific actors from the Pacific Northwest were belittling me and that Bryce was getting sexual favors from some up-and-coming underage girls. It was as ridiculous as it sounded, and I chalked it up to somebody trolling Kat or him having delusions, as I was far past trusting his mental capacity. Plus, his stories became increasingly far-fetched, like that Steve Harvey threatened to sue him 2 minutes after he posted a 10-second clip of him doing an impression of him on Facebook, that he had inherited shares of Lionsgate, that he was in danger from being assassinated by Bryce, that J-Lo was aggressively pursuing his talents. Plus, he was constantly claiming a close family member had died or been murdered, so he hoped we didn't have anything to do with it. I think his mother's died at least 4 times over the last couple years. Kat came to adopt the persona of a J-rocker, claiming to use his acting talent as a middle-aged Filipino-American actor to look like a Japanese star in his mid-20s. Now basing everything in his profile about returning to his roots as a J-rocker, he claimed that he had not only attempted suicide multiple times, but that our agent had dropped him. This sounded like an absolute delusion, so I encouraged him to Zoom with her to clear the air. This led to him saying that I and everyone else wanted to look at him and laugh while he killed himself on live stream, so he threatened to declare to everyone that it would be my idea when he'd kill himself, my opportunity to be famous. First, Renee attacked me for giving her father the idea to kill himself over Zoom and that I needed to let her father recover. My own, very real uncle took his own life, and I spent the day comforting my cousin who is like a brother to me. Lisbeth laid into me in the middle of the night, saying that Kat had attempted suicide and had been dropped, and that she and Kat had been threatened and harassed since I showed up. So I needed to tell her who sent me, as if I had brought any of this on me and that everyone was coming for me. I told her this was uncool, as I had been honest about how I found them and that I was comforting my cousin over his father's very real suicide. She upped the ante, calling me unprofessional, a stalker, and a criminal, that James was FINGMAADDDD and making sure I burn. Verbatim. Copy-pasted. Before I cut her from messaging me, she sent me gay porn. The next day, after she had apparently harassed several people, she posted that she had been hacked, which I sincerely doubted at the time. A couple weeks later, after numerous ridiculing messages from Kat's little circle, I woke up to accusatory messages from Lisbeth, Renee, and Shauna, saying that Nick and James had posted on Facebook, saying that I coaxed them into a Zoom call, which had me masturbating on camera to them and Kat. The messages from all had the same spelling errors, hitting P instead of O. Plus, these women were allegedly living in Sweden, Japan, and Russia. How would they all be sent within 90 minutes of each other at that here? So I started researching them, especially their images. They were all stolen from much younger, innocent people who were just trying to live their lives, from profiles that I saw Kat liking their photos on. He was the only one to ever talk about knowing them in person. He was behind everything. Lisbeth, Shauna, Renee, Kristen, Ashley, Jane, Jessica, all the executives, all the producers' assistants, the emails and Facebook profiles impersonating me, they were all him. All the phone numbers were from burner phones, shipped in from the general locations that the real people lived. We found some of the autographed memorabilia on eBay. He spent literally hundreds to build this fantasy. Lisbeth and Shauna did not exist in any regard, the former's likeness stolen from a retired model and a fitness guru, the latter stolen from an actor and a crip walker, though multiple fan communities had been coaxed into believing Lisbeth was real. Naturally, I blocked the socks, save for Renee, as I held out hope that Kat would not be so abhorrent as to fake having a daughter, but even she turned out to be the same, as her likeness was stolen from an actress. In the meantime, he used his Renee sock to talk himself up, and claimed that Lisbeth had gotten the FBI to investigate me for asking about the career opportunity in 2014, which I laughed off. I didn't confront Kat for another year, but did drop some not-so-subtle hints that he did not catch on to. James blocked me before I could fill him in on my findings, as Shauna told him that I was telling people that when we met for lunch a couple years prior, I gave him a blowjob while my wife was in the restroom, and that I was one of several people who got Kristen blacklisted in Hollywood, which she isn't at all. Meanwhile, Kat told people that James was a closeted homosexual who was trying to coerce him, despite the fact that James took Kat in while he was homeless, only to be repaid by finding him stealing money out of his sock drawer. I got through to James later that year when I shared my findings. He was embarrassed and has apologized profusely for being fooled, though he couldn't come to accept that he never interacted with the real Kristen. The stress had accelerated some of James' heart issues, which Kat used his socks to mock him for, making him out to be a B. Kat created another profile based on a very real J-rocker who he claimed was his Japanese cousin. Slightly amused, I let him spew his nonsense from that angle for a couple months, until he started the rumor that James' teenage son was actually a butch woman in her mid-20s, and that James was looking to rape his son. The pictures and videos of Kat supposedly living as a J-rocker are all stolen from people actually a part of that scene. I have yet to see an iota of evidence that he has so much as been within 1,000 miles of Japan. As my career improved after the 2017 debacle, so too has my network. I learned firsthand from industry contacts who worked on the productions that the vast majority of Kat's credits are fake, and that the last several were actually extorted through schemes like what he pulled on Nick and I. Several of the actors he supposedly was close with, such as Kristen and Ashley, have no idea who he is. That movie that I was hoping to get involved with 10 years ago. The staff found no record of him ever even being in contention to be involved, and the damnedest thing is that I could have gotten on, had I spoken to one of the real assistants. Revisiting the articles and fan sites discussing the so-called leaks, I found that some people doubted the authenticity and even located the sources he used for conning the world. Several people over the years who have been fans of different franchises he's claimed affiliation with have told me that when they picked his brain about details, he'd share vague, filtered pictures and descriptions of supposedly cut characters when pressed. He'd professed to have been demoted to being a mere stuntman, but kept because the filmmakers liked him. The actors he claimed were calling me R-Ed at Nick's behest. Well, not only did they have no idea who Kat was, but they were offended to even have their names mentioned alongside Nick's, considering they were involved in a massive arbitration case for unpaid wages against him, followed by their lawyers telling them to never cross paths with him again, especially with the sexual battery stories becoming more specific amidst the Me Too movement. While I was recovering from a parathyroidectomy that following December, Kat informed people that James and I had joined a white supremacist group because we were apparently confused about him being in South Korea, as fictional us couldn't decipher that from North Korea. Shortly after, I announced to the world that my wife and I were expecting a baby. A couple weeks later, Kat confronted me through a call and text one night that my son was actually James. I had it. I blocked his ass and haven't heard from him since he called me up a couple days later through a burner phone, sniveling into the phone and claiming that Lisbeth, Renee, Shauna, and all the others were real when I pressed him on the subject, with his explanation being that their accounts were hacked, but with their pictures replaced by other women who he happened to be his friends, too. After that point, he told a few people different stories about why I blocked him, that he was hacked, that I'm racist, that I am giving his friends blowjobs, that he sent a group message to everyone with the name Sam, who all had pregnant wives that blocked him. He targeted myself and others when we were at our lowest or most vulnerable, like when I was putting my cat down on my birthday, when I was moving, when I was comforting my cousin over his father's suicide, when I was on a romantic getaway with my wife, when my own father was having a cancerous tumor removed. He doubled down. Bryce was targeted when he was in surgery, and James was targeted when he was being treated for heart disease. Likewise, he leaned into what he perceived to be insecurities. As a combat veteran, Kat Socks spread rumors about Bryce raping little girls on the battlefield. As a conservative middle-aged man, James was called a homosexual. After telling Kat that I disliked the movie Alien Abduction for calling someone with Asperger's R, that's what he went for. He went so far as to sabotage Bryce's already crumbling marriage by having his Lisbeth Sock message his wife with a story about sleeping with him. This was brought up in family court. So now this fictional person's testimony is logged in the public record. By comparison to the other victims, what I experienced was light. He did do one nice thing in the form of the agency referral, yet it came with the caveat that he would use his socks to accuse me of manipulating him or that I was supplanting him. The worst part is that the only ones he went after were people who called him friend. None of his victims were enemies or even people who wouldn't give him the time of day. So that is the story of Kat. Yes, I am embarrassed for many reasons, namely that I let it happen for as long as it did, and I dismissed the cautionary words of others concerning multiple people. We were all incredibly gullible and had no business falling for any of this nonsense. I myself was young, insecure, and fresh out of college, so I was excited for an opportunity. As for him, I believe he does what he does out of a mixture of mental illness and insecurity. He regrets how little his career has progressed, so he tears down those with aspirations. What he orchestrates is well organized, yet he displays the maturity of a 13-year-old with the substance of his abuse.